Hello and welcome to Talking Templars. Aha, me hearties. We've got all Pirates of the Caribbean today because, by the way, I was born on the same day as Johnny Depp in 1963, and there the similarity ends.
No, it's an uncanny resemblance, obviously. Never see you in the same room, do we?
I think my private life is calmer than his, but nevertheless, I'm substantially poorer. But nevertheless, we are talking pirates today. And the reason we're talking pirates on Talking Templars is this theory that the Knights Templar became pirates. Now, just before we get into that, I should introduce ourselves. This is Talking Templars. I'm Tony McMahon. I don't normally dress like this, but I am going to just for today as we're talking pirates. And alongside me is my cabin boy, Dr. Steve Tibble.
Yeah, in your dreams, Tony. Well, so this is basically just an excuse for Tony to get his dressing up box out and see what's in the bottom of it. And it's clearly something worth looking at there. Very, very fetching.
Well, you won't forget this in a hurry, will you, dear viewers?
Even if you want.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Templars. What happens is they're crushed, aren't they? In 1307, arrest warrants go out, the Templars are rounded up, put in prison, etc., etc., and eventually the Grand Master is executed after they've all been put on trial. But we have this theory, of course, that some of the Templars got away. Did they get away on their ships? And did they take to piracy? Now, question that I have for you, Dr. Tibble, is this as crazy a theory as it sounds, or is it conceivable that the Knights Templar, some Knights Templar, went rogue, took to the high seas, and started boarding other people's ships?
Yes. Good point, Tony. When you say we have this theory, can I just interject and say I don't have this theory? It's like
I meant we in a more generic
we
sense.
in a kind of monarchical sense. But it's one of those lovely conspiracy theories because it's fun. You know, pirates can be fun. So people love to combine their favorite things, like Aliens versus Predator, and I think there's this a wonderful attraction to putting the idea of pirates and Templars in the same box. One of the things that makes conspiracies work, something that gives them the kind of propulsion, is that there is a germ of truth. It may be complete nonsense, but there's some kind of spurious plausibility. And actually, the Templars do have some tiny aspects of evidence that you could help to construct into something. So, for instance, the Templars did own ships. They did have fleets. They were very good at logistics and shipping things around, Northern Europe, Mediterranean, and so on. That was a big part of their role in helping to defend the Holy Land. Was, basically shifting goods from west to east. And men and horses and so on. So you could say, wow, of course, they had a big navy just waiting to set off when things got tough. The other aspect, I guess, that you could put forward as a bit of evidence is that there were some pirates from the military orders. The Hospitallers weren't closed down, and because they were trying to defend the Eastern Mediterranean, they developed a lot of kind of piratical naval skills. And some of their guys genuinely did go rogue and joined, left the order and joined the Catalan Company. And we know we're doing some freelance, definitely pirate activity. We also know, this is, I'm actually putting a bit of evidence out there. I'm trying to do the conspiracists, the justice of showing some flakes of evidence. We do know that some of the Templars escaped when the arrest warrants went out, because if you can see your mates are being tortured to death to help them remember that they're Satanists, there is obviously a bit of a motivation to go and see mum and hang out in the family estate until the heat dies down. And we know, certainly just using the British example, that about a dozen Templars seem to have gone missing when the warrants were first sent out. But equally, we know that they mostly drifted back. And actually, the reason that they went was nothing, not that they were an elite force trying to sail off to America and discover new lands or wreak havoc on those they hated. They would just basically seem to go back to the ranch and put their feet up and not be tortured to death, which they obviously must have suspected would have been in store for them. So there are some slivers of evidence, but I think, Tony, we could basically go through each of them and kick the tires and see how much of that evidence really would stack up. It's one thing saying there's a possibility that they could have had some of the ingredients that could have led up to piracy. That's a classic conspiratorial pyramid of logic. But let's kick the tires at the bottom of that pyramid and see what actually happened.
Just a quick Templar ad break here to tell you all about Dr. Steve Tibble's book, Crusader Criminals, all about those who went a little bit rogue in the Holy Land, the interplay between criminality and crusading, some of the larger-than-life characters who did some very wicked and evil things on crusade. So get your copy at Amazon, Waterstones, and other outlets. Well, I guess, one of the things about the Knights Templars, they engaged in very tough military drills as well as praying like monks several times a day. And it tends to be assumed that, if they were pensioned off, if they retired, then they went off and became prayerful monks. But I think it's reasonable to assume that in an organisation like the Knights Templar, you were going to have some people who, let's just say, the life of monastic prayer may not have been ideally suited. They've got military skills. In a sense, why wouldn't they? At the very least, why wouldn't they have been swords for hire? They're going to be people in the Knights Templar who just like fighting, and their preference was for fighting over prayer. But of course, we're then being asked to take a leap of faith that this lust for fighting then led them to become pirates on the high seas.
Absolutely.
One of the theories I know is that having taken to the high seas, and people have tried to name one or two of the ships that they believe were Templar ships, that they specifically targeted ships owned by the papal states, the kingdom, the temporal domain that was ruled by the Pope, as well as other people. So there's this kind of idea, and I'm not endorsing it, but the theory runs, those who've written this up say it was a kind of a revenge mission that kind of created, that over time created, and if you want, the Templars, the Templars are accused of morphing into many things, like Freemasons, for example, but in this instance, they're accused essentially of morphing into pirates. And just to float one more thing, just to really annoy you, Steve.
Here I'm eager to dive in here.
Is basically this idea as well that the skull and bones has some kind. I know. See, I've set him off now. That the skull and bones has some kind of Templar significance.
Yes.
What do you think about that, Steve?
Yes, I can't tell you what I think, Tony, because the poor audience would be mortified. But just going straight back to your first point, really, the fact that this is a highly militarized order, lots of young guys looking for a fight. You have to remember the timing of all this. So the order gets closed down from whatever it is, 1307 to 1312, something like that. The Crusades have finished. Effectively, the Holy Land has closed down from 1291. So I'm not like great at maths, but you're talking, heading up towards whatever that is, 15, 20 years after the end of the Crusade. So say you're a guy who signed up, you're an experienced warrior, you're late 20s, you're now probably in your mid to late 40s, you're probably a bit knackered. If you look at the guys, again, using the British case study, when the Templars were rounded up, apart from head office in London, the main place where you found most Templars was in a nursing home in Cambridgeshire. The guys were old. They'd been fighting for a long time in the East. Half of them were back in Britain already because they had PTSD. They were demented. They were deaf. A lot of the guys couldn't be interviewed because they couldn't hear any questioning. Very, very mundane stuff like that. And by the time the order was closed down, given that their only role was fighting, they hadn't been doing that for whatever it is, nearly 20 years. So, and these were old men. I don't think there's any evidence really, certainly not that I've come across in the UK particularly, of the guys of having this elite force that's going to go out and help Robert the Bruce at Bannockburn or whatever. There are some parts of the world, where their assets, say in Spain, where the Reconquista is still going on, where they would have been fighting guys and they would have just been transferred into other military orders. But that's not the same as saying that these are Templars going rogue and creating this kind of shadow Templar thing, and they're now doing this. This time it's personal and attacking the Papal States or whatever. I mean,
ever wanted to know more about the history of the Knights Templar from their origins through to the end, and a few of the conspiracy theories in between, then buy the Knights Templar History and Mystery by Tony McMahon. It's available on Amazon, Waterstones, and other outlets. Buy it to get a comprehensive look at the Knights Templar. So, I mean, just to kind of take it a step further, obviously there's a very popular theory which has spawned a multi-season documentary on the History Channel that the Knights Templar basically made it across the Atlantic with the assistance of a Scottish clan, the Sinclairs, and that they buried their treasure at a place called Oak Island in Newfoundland, which in turn became a kind of a bolt hole for pirates, the likes of Captain Kidd and all that. And this story basically, it's actually a Reader's Digest article in the 1960s, which brought it to mass appeal. And it's been a hugely popular series. We've both appeared on TV shows linked to it, talking about it. People are fascinated by this idea that the Templars took treasure across the Atlantic and buried it pirate style in a place called Oak Island. I mean, in a way, almost kind of setting aside the veracity, because I can bet $1 billion what your position is on this.
No, I believe it all.
But what do you think is the appeal of the story? Because you only have to put the words Templar and treasure together, and then season that with piracy, and you've got a movie in the making.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Tony. And you've just kind of explained it there, really. I mean, you take two super popular, semi-magical ideas and put them together, and you get something that people are interested in. It's fun, and particularly with Oak Island, I don't think there's you have to keep coming back to the solid facts. The Templars ceased to exist in 1312. They're all arrested from 1307. Europeans don't go over to America until, whatever it is, 100 years later or more, much more. So there isn't, I've never been aware of any real evidence of that, and we do know that the big Templar fleets in France, on the Atlantic coast, the guys in France were almost totally just gripped with this kind of guillotine on Friday the 13th when they were closed down. It wasn't like they had 4 months' notice to get the ships ready and maybe plan to discover a new continent or what have you. I mean, it's the whole thing. You can have fun with the idea, and I'm all in favour of fun, but there's no historical background to it that I'm aware of.
Well, that's a bit of a downer, isn't it? I feel I overdressed for this episode now, but
I couldn't stop it.
I just had to go into my fancy dress box, and anyway, so we can therefore say no, I think, to the idea of the Templars becoming pirates. Unless, of course, you have a different view. And please do feel free to share. We are not the final word on any of these questions, but I've got to take this wig is really uncomfortable. So I want to go away and take this off now, prepare for our next episode. But until then, thank you for watching. Tell us what you think about the Knights Templar being pirates. Was it all yo-ho-ho from 1307 onwards? Clearly, Dr. Tibble.
I think it was no. But...
Oh, very good. Oh, he ad-libbed.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm here all week. Yeah.
So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And non nobis domine.
Join us again next week for more Talking Templars.